Right. You ever feel like just throwing the ball out and letting them run? I asked it the other day, and he blew me off on the question.
I don't remember
I
blowing
really
you off.
mean that, Coach. These are thoroughbreds. These are athletes. Do you ever get that feeling? Let the athletes run.
You know, I think offensively we do. I think we're actually playing at a faster pace than last year. They get a lot of freedom offensively. We still shoot a lot of threes, and we're actually playing probably even more that way than we did last year overall. Defensively, we're not doing it as much. So that was something that, however many games in, I kind of looked at and thought maybe we need to peel this back a little bit. It's not giving us our best chance to win. So we're playing probably a lot slower on the defensive end, not turning maybe people over as much on the defensive end, but our field goal percentage defense has gone up. So unfortunately, offensively overall, as weird as it sounds, we might be playing too fast offensively because that's where we run into a bit of a rut here. But I think those are questions I ask, as far as what's the best pace of play for us on either end of the floor, and trying to kind of find that sweet spot we'll keep working on.
What does with Fresno State, what do you see with Braxton and how he's either changed or developed his games from when you had him?
Yeah, they're good. I was just telling Lee, it's the closest thing I've seen. And let me back that up. Last year, we played San Diego State. I think it might have been here or the tournament. I don't remember. And Justin came up to me, before or after the game, whatever, and said, man, if I ever get to be a head coach, I'm going to play exactly like you do. And they're playing exactly like we did. They're small. They shoot a ton of threes. They play fast, and they can beat you. Like, they're very balanced around the perimeter. And, New Williams makes 6 threes last night. Deshaun Taylor, Bittner, Huggins, Blackwell. They've got these 6'4" and below guys all around the perimeter that can all shoot. They're all fast. They can all handle the ball. They can all score. They can do all that. And Braxton's just a perfect player within that because he's good on the ball, he's good off the ball, he can slide anywhere around those kind of perimeter positions. He's obviously, for when I had him, was a terrific shooter, still is. Won them the game at Utah State really with his shooting. But just even watching some of these other games, you can see he's a very good overall functional guard like the rest of these guys are. He can put the ball on the deck. He can get to the rim. He has a lot of just more well-rounded guard skills than he had when I had him. And probably just because he's been playing against these guys and with these guys for the last couple of years, his game just kind of grown and developed that way.
And you and him ever talk since he left?
Yeah. We spent a bunch of time last year when we were at Fresno. We hung out when we went to Fresno last year, and that's really about it. I keep in touch with his high school coach still quite a bit, so I'm going to see him at the game and things like that. But nothing, where we're talking every day or every week or something like that.
How beneficial has this break been for you to get ready, prepare this whole week?
It probably was really good for me personally, just given how the game ended. I think if I had cameras in my face pretty consistently after that game, I might have said or done some things that I might not have been too proud of later. And unfortunately, that's happened a few times this year. So I'm thankful for the break myself because obviously the way it went down was the way it went down. But obviously with time, you're on to the next game. So it's given me a little bit of time to just dig into Fresno and get our guys ready and hopefully get prepared for Saturday to be the best we can be.
Yeah, kind of expanding on that a little bit, Paul. You talked after the Nevada game this season had been kind of challenging for you personally, professionally, a little bit all that. I'm just, I'm curious, if you've thought any more about that or how it's changed or progressed anything in the last couple of weeks since then.
After the Nevada game, yeah, no, I remember that now. The profession I'm in is the profession I'm in. I've given my life to it. I moved to this country for it. I've worked my way up for whatever it is now, 14 years, I think. And I've been really lucky to have been around winning at every stage of it. And this year, particularly, I think the expectations, going into it, the way it was unfolding early, I probably just didn't handle very well. And that's not something I'm overly proud of. It's not something that I look back on and think, wow, like you handled that the right way. I mean, I'm probably embarrassed at some of the things that have kind of gone on, even walking out of this room, things like that. I haven't done a great job, and that's why when you win the Nevada game, maybe those things are all supposed to go away. But after the Nevada game, I was like, no, they don't go away. I still have acted that way, either the person or a husband or a father or whatever it may be, and that doesn't make me feel good, unfortunately. So the wins and the losses both, I guess, maybe make you put things into perspective. I'm a young guy. It's my third year being a head coach. I'm still trying to balance all those things in the appropriate right way and guide my team the best I can. And hopefully at this point right now, that's what I'm doing, and that's all I try and do every day. I'm far from perfect at it, but hopefully if we can just keep a good perspective about things and just a good energy about things, which I still feel like we have, this team can still accomplish good things, whether it's Saturday or even just forward from there.
Paul, getting back to having a week between games, were you guys able to just kind of take a breather and get away from the craziness for a couple of days at least?
Not really. I thought part of what really helped us last year was we really worked through December, through January, through February, through March, and I felt like we just got better. And even though maybe the expectations on this year's team might be different and people would have expected it to be here on the outset, I just want to see if we can make this team better. That's all I can really try and do. And I just don't feel like taking days off, particularly with the youth that we have. I don't think that's going to make them better. I think Keith McGee needs to be in the gym. I think McQuash needs to be in the gym. I think Vance needs to be in the gym. I think Carlton needs to be in the gym. I think all these guys that they just need to play more basketball, I think we need to be on the court practicing, working. Now, there's a mental part to that I'm sensitive to. There's even a physical part that I'm sensitive to. But when I kind of weigh those, I'm like, man, I still think they need to be on the court working, getting better, growing, and improving their games.
Is there any thoughts like, hey, let's turn the corner here, we got a shot to finish up this season strong?
I think we've felt that way all year long. And I think everyone's asked the question after so many different games, hey, is this the turning point? Is this the turning point? I don't know when the turning point is. All I know is we keep working every day. Do I sit there and think there's been an inordinate amount of improbable events go against us? I do, but that doesn't necessarily change. We still have the same goals, which is just try and get better every day. And hopefully some of those improbable things maybe start to become in your favor as opposed to against it. But until that day happens, there's nothing you can do. You just have to keep working and trying to improve and hope that at some point the wins will come and our season will still become what we all wanted it to be in the first place.
Do you have any updates on Drew Drennan, and how is that affecting helping Mathis and Mickey when they're maybe not having a good night, or they just need that extra support in the point guard position?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's not something you can really talk about because he's not available. So you just work with what you have and do the best with what you can. Drew should practice today. We'll find out. This will actually be his first practice, so we'll see how that goes. And then based on symptoms and what doctors say, we'll kind of know more from there. And then once he's fully cleared and in the lineup, then we can start to maybe manage things with having him as an option. But the reality is when someone's not an option, it's not really something you think much about. You have the guys you have. Hey, what can we do to win with these guys for this particular game?
Is he officially on concussion protocol?
Yes, at one point he was. It only lasts 10 days. It's obviously been a lot longer than that. So at this point, it really just becomes down to like the symptoms and what he's reporting and what our doctors and training staff allow him to do. And today will be his first practice.
Coach, public reaction to your program. Scrutiny, applause, pat on the back, whatever the reaction might be. Did you ever think you'd run into 450,000 head coaches in this community?
Yes. The crazy thing is, and I've had this question come to me probably a lot lately, like, Henry, and it's not something I'm overly proud of. I'm really hard on myself. And that's something that a lot of mentors of mine, family members of mine, coworkers of mine have always tried to work with me on. So no matter how harsh someone else may be about me, I've been harsher. So it doesn't really impact me in any way because I've unfortunately already had those dark, unpleasant thoughts myself. So not necessarily that I welcome that, but it doesn't really impact me entirely. I'm much more harder on myself than anybody else.
Has it ever ticked you off or made you happy?
Not at all. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a decent. I don't even know what exactly we're referring to, but most of it's probably true. You know, like I don't make excuses. I'm not even going to try to on how this season has gone. It's on me. You know, like I sign the players, I coach the players, I run practice, I hire the staff, I do all this stuff. So at the end of the day, whatever happens on the court is a reflection of me. It's not me being able to point the finger at someone else or something else. I think at times we have dialogue about what my rationale might be about how things go, but I would never want that to be confused with me abstaining from my own responsibility to this. And my responsibility is to make the Lobo basketball team the best it can possibly be. And I believe in my ability to do that. But if you're looking at the smaller sample size of what this season is, whatever criticisms may come my way are warranted. I wouldn't even dispute those.
Talk about how good this Fresno State team is. What are you really stressing this week in practice, and what are the keys that you need to do on Saturday?
Again, probably very similar to playing us last year. You've got to protect the basketball, and you've got to guard the three. They can shoot the three from multiple positions in multiple ways. They've made 12 or 13 last night, and Huggins made one, and Taylor made one. So you're talking about 10 other threes from other players on the court. It's not as easy going in saying, let's contain this guy or let's contain that guy. And that was the way our team was last year. It's what made, Antono and McQuatch and Anthony and all these different guys kind of hard to guard because you really couldn't key in on a guy. And their balance offensively, it was make them hard. Wyoming did a great job for 34 minutes or so. I think about 6 minutes to go is when all of a sudden they started making some threes and kind of spread the game out. But for 34 minutes, Wyoming did a pretty good job. And then it just goes like that. And that was kind of the way we were last year too. So, you're never in a comfort zone with a team like this. You've got to sustain that quick ability to bang 2 or 3, 4 threes in a row in successive possessions. And then with that speed and versatility also comes the defensive end. So we've got to protect the basketball offensively, and we've got to contain their explosiveness on the perimeter defensively.
Have you liked the way your team has rebounded from that loss and their mentality this week heading into this game?
I've said this really all year. If you come, I've had one losing season in my career, and I remember it. It was a huge turning point at New Mexico State. I think it was year 4, and from there, Marvin, who was my head coach at the time, I went through it with him, and there was a lot of changes he made at the end of the year, and from there went to 4 straight NCAA tournaments, and really changed the trajectory of the program from that losing season. And I remember a lot of things about that year, and things that were going on around the program. I don't feel a lot of that. Like if you come to our practice, that wasn't the same practices I had that year. If you meet with players or you meet with staff or you're around our program, there's still a very good energy about us. We still practice hard. We still compete. We're still engaged. There's no finger pointing. There's no animosity. There's no, anything like that kind of going on, which I've endured before. And I had that for a year, and I vividly remember it. So I don't feel like that's our path, but I can't get away from how it's going, or where we're at right now. Now, do I think one play, in the last game changes some things? Do I think, one play in certain ways might make this whole perspective change? And that in itself is probably a little inordinary, but it is what it is. And if one play goes against you, one play goes against you. And if that is something that sends us down a certain road and we have to recover back from it, then we have to figure out how tough we're going to be. And I still believe that we have that. I don't have a lot of other signs other than a lot of really what I think are pretty improbable things happening to our program this year. Those have happened, which have sent us down a certain path, but I don't think there's anything internally that I have a lot of concern about. And I'm sitting here having to tell you guys, this is this or this is that, and this is the reason. If there's a reason right now, it's me. And I've just got to kind of continue to find a way to get it out of this group.
Paul, kind of feeding off that, last year's team was able to overcome some of these deficiencies with a lack of talent and caught fire at the end of the year. Have we reached the point where this team maybe doesn't get going like that? And I mean, and how did you reach last year's team as opposed to not getting these guys right now?
Man, trust me, I've spent more time on that than you'll ever imagine. I mean, if we just want to leave it at that, I think, last year's team at the end of the day was juniors and seniors. And regardless of how new they were or regardless of what people may think of their talent level, they were juniors and seniors. And this year's team is not. It doesn't have that same level of experience. So I think that is just one difference between the two teams. And I also just think that, the people that maybe last year thought certain players weren't very talented, the numbers say different. The numbers say Joe Furstinger was a very, very good basketball player. The numbers say Antono Jackson was a very good basketball player. The numbers say McQuatch Mal. Like the guys last year, if you just look at numbers, really produced and did a lot of good things. And this year's team, although talented, those players aren't having the same production. And that, again, that could be coaching as much as anything. But I think the idea that this year's team is so much more talented than last year's team, I don't know how much water that really holds when you look at just, numbers. Because last year's guys, although maybe we did struggle, or they individually struggled for certain parts of the year, at some point it kicked on. And at some point they really went out and produced at a level that forced a team to win games. So whether that's still coming for this team individually or collectively or coaching-wise, I guess remains to be seen over the last, 10 plus to go.
Coach, do you have anything more to say about Corey Manigault? It seemed like we're just not seeing him a minute or two, and then he's on the bench. And
yeah.
Is there anything?
No, I genuinely last game, when Carlton came back, it obviously was going to create different lineup scenarios. Initially, those were lineup scenarios that didn't change a ton, but as the seasons kind of unfolded, we're looking at different things, particularly offensively right now, to kind of get ourselves going. And it obviously is going to affect the defensive end as well. And there are times in games, I think, guys have gone in that aren't him, that have played well, that have maybe warranted more minutes for them as opposed to less minutes for him. And I think that's unfortunately what's happened a little bit here of late. That may be a coaching problem, that may be a coaching error, but has nothing to do with Corey Manigault. He's been practicing the way I would have asked him to practice. He's still doing things that I think are going to allow him to be a great basketball player, but I guess maybe not impervious to some of those game-by-game or day-by-day things that might take him out of a lineup for longer stretches than he would like or maybe other people would like too.
Coach, not to put the cart before the horse, but it's inevitable Louisville fans are planning a trip to Las Vegas to support you at the tournament. Can you give us an evaluation, not to discount where you are right now, but realistically, where are the Lobos in the future, if it's not unfair to say?
Man, the thing is, Henry, I don't know. We're one play away from having 2 top 50 wins. And we're one play away from beating the 2 top teams in our league, and feeling this would be we would all have completely different moods if the last game went a little differently. 4-4 isn't where you'd love to be, but given our schedule and given who the wins were against and given where the schedule goes, I'd feel really, really good about where we're at. And that's probably what pained me so much about maybe what happened and the things that I kind of felt about it. It wasn't necessarily the loss as much as I knew the significance of that one. It was a team ahead of you in the standings that was in the top 50 in the country, and you don't get a lot of top 50 opportunities for yourself. And for any team to have 2 top 50 wins is encouraging, and I think to have had that, I and we would have made yourself feel a lot better. And that gets back to the whole process outcome thing. Now, does one play say, oh my gosh, now all of a sudden you're not who you want to be? Are you sticking with the process and eventually those things will come your way? You want to keep feeling that way, but it's hard not to be human and say, gosh, man, if we had that, that's your second top 50 win and everyone would have felt a little bit differently. So I don't necessarily, I say all that because I don't think Vegas right now for me, even though it's not something I'm really thinking about, I don't feel any worse about it because I'm still looking at it from the way I just said it. I don't feel awful. The record is what it is, and maybe the losses are piling up in a way that nobody necessarily envisioned, but I don't know if that takes away from still this team's capability, which, like I said, I think so far speaks for itself a little bit.
I don't know how often you talk with guys like Justin and Nico and Craig Smith around the league. Those are 3 first-year coaches who are doing what you did last year. Nico maybe not so much at Colorado State, but they've had moments where they're clicking without a whole lot of talent. But teams 2 and 3 in this league right now are first-year coaches. That's what you guys did last year. Utah State, like you, picked 9th. They're up in 2nd right now. I'm curious if what you're going through and what this team's going through with what was perceived to be more talent is just a sophomore slump in the staff, if there's some just kind of growing stagnant. Maybe they aren't reacting to the first-year coach like they did last year. And if you try and recapture what they're doing.
You know, I hate even like answering that question, to be totally honest with you, because I think that's me not owning up for my own flaws or weaknesses to date that have maybe put us this way. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I call coaches, mentors, whoever, hey, what do you think? How are things going? And a lot of them will just say, like, the second year is always the hardest year, you know, and there's a lot of other great coaches and great programs right now in their second year that are really, really struggling. And there's coaches in our own league, whether it's Leon, whoever, who just year 2 happened to be a step back. Now, that wasn't anything I ever really saw happening. It's not even anything I ever really want to say is going to happen. I'd like to still feel like there's enough left and we have enough left where we're still going to right this ship. But at this point of the year, it's hard to say it obviously hasn't gone the way we wanted. That's on me more than anything. I think there's some merit to what you're saying, but I don't know if that necessarily takes me out of being responsible for that. You know what I'm saying? That's still on me. I do think as a first-year coach, there are some inherent, advantages you can tap into that maybe you can't quite as a second-year guy. But I don't know if that's necessarily the absolute difference between maybe where this season at this point was expected to be and where it is now.
But you and Dutch are going through the same thing. I mean, the two, from the outside looking in, the 2 most disappointing teams in this league right now are the 2 teams that played for the tournament title last year with first-year head coaches. And both of those coaches in their second year have their fan bases not that happy.
Sure.
I'm just curious if you need to change it up from what you did in year 1, because that second-year drought that you've spoken to other coaches about, like, do you just need to kind of change everything you're doing to avoid that?
You mean like right now or down the road?
Just, well, right now, anytime.
Yeah, no, look, I think like my own like program thoughts, I make notes, I have journals, I do all kinds of things that when the season's over, you look back at the whole picture and say, this is what we think we need to do going forward. Right now, my sole goal is like, what do we need to do to beat Fresno? And what can we do to make this team the best it can be, grow certain people individually, socially, in every which way. And that's me probably no matter what. You know, we're doing Bell Let's Talk today. You know what I mean? Like I'm not into drastically changing everything that I'm about just because maybe the first 20 games is off by 5 games or so of where we would have loved to have been. I'm going to continue to be who I be and grow in my own ways, and hopefully this team will kind of grow with it.
So, Coach, the whole term of talent is rather subjective. You mentioned last year's team might be more talented than people gave them credit for. You took 3rd in the league and really only had 3 guys in the top 19 or 2 guys in the top 19 players in the league, according to first, second, and third team, and then the 4 honorable mention. Mathis was 3rd, and Antono was in the honorable mention. So obviously there was a lot of other things that went into you guys taking third in the league. In comparing it season to season, like Will was kind of asking about, I guess the one difference though as you go into February this year from last year is that you were playing the same style of ball like next week as you did last week and the previous week and the previous week. That's one thing you could lean on. Do you ever have any second guesses on how that difference in philosophy from you guys is going to play out?
I was just telling Lee, like I envy that as far as the way we were, but I really I don't regret it. Like this is what we had to do, I think. I just felt like as you added up a lot of different things, we unfortunately have had to become a more game-to-game team in order to try and get as much as we could out of this thing or this season or just the upcoming game. I don't necessarily look back and say, man, I wish we didn't do that. I'd seen enough, evaluated enough, in real time to realize that I just thought we needed to make this change. And I think when we made the change, we had some good results, but now we just have to find a way to manage it here going forward, hopefully, to improve those results.
Anything else for Coach? All right, thank you.